Put me down this instant. The tall, bluish figure hisses, her voice sending a strange ripple through the air. Jace's arms tense as he staggers backward, nearly losing his balance on the broken pavement of the marketplace. Moments ago, he was kneeling beside what looked like an alien cat, a sleek, injured creature with large, intelligent eyes, trying to pull it out of the smoking wreckage of a small crash transport pod. But in the span of a single breath, the creature twisted and elongated, bones and sinew rearranging with a fluid snap until it became this towering, statuesque female alien now clutching at his shoulders. Her slitted golden eyes narrow as she glares down at him. She's a full 2 feet taller than he is, her limbs long and graceful, her skin an uncanny shade of pale metallic blue that seems to catch the light in shifting patterns. Ears like a cat's, pointed and standing tall, twitch in agitation. He hasn't even processed the metamorphosis. The crowd around them hasn't either. Vendors and passers-by are frozen in shock, some with their mouths hanging open, others backing away in fear. Smoke from the crashed pod billows across the open plaza, swirling around them like a stage effect. Jace tries to set her on her feet gently, but the ground is slick with fluids from the damaged vessel, and she stumbles against him, pressing her lithe body to his. Her voice resonates again, this time in a lower, more dangerous register. You saved me from the burning vessel. You carried me in your arms. You touched my body. Do you realize what that means? She studies his face, her nose flaring slightly as if she's taking in his scent. Jace's heart pounds. He's no stranger to strange creatures. He's spent half his life wandering fringe colonies and war-torn planets as a salvager. But he's never seen anything like this. What the hell are you talking about? He snaps, trying to pull away, but her grip is shockingly strong. He can feel the heat of her body, sense the trembling tension in her muscles. She's disoriented, yet furious, and her next words slice through the silence like a blade. You are my rescuer, she says, raising her voice so everyone nearby can hear. You are my daddy. The last word comes out in a triumphant purr, as if she's proud to pronounce it. Jace's face goes slack. He hears the crowd collectively suck in a breath. A wave of confusion surges through him, but before he can ask what she means, the alien woman wraps an arm around his neck, practically purring into his ear. It's the title you humans use for the one who claims, yes? I heard it in the transmissions. Daddy means you are the caretaker, the protector, the one who must never abandon me. He almost drops her in shock. That's not. No, you can't just stop saying that. He stumbles, catches himself, and tries to peel her arm off his shoulders. She refuses to let go. The onlookers, who were already frightened by the crash, now seem caught between horror and a bizarre sort of fascination. Some have begun recording with their handheld devices. Look, lady, Jace mutters under his breath. I don't know what language translator you've got wired in that shape-shifting body of yours, but you've got the wrong idea. Her ears flatten against her skull, and she draws herself up to her full height. You claim me, then you deny me? Her voice booms with indignation. Is this how your species practices its bonding rites? Are you not the one who risked your life to pull me from the wreckage? A ring of luminescent lines flares across her collarbones, shimmering in time with her agitation. She glances around at the crowd as if daring them to intervene. Jace notices uniformed officials pushing through the throng. He knows that if the colonial enforcement sees him holding an unregistered alien, especially one who just crash-landed, he'll be in trouble. Possibly the kind of trouble that ends with him in a cell, or worse. Look, we have to move, he growls, grabbing the alien woman's wrist and pulling her away from the burning transport. She hisses but follows him, each long stride of her legs easily matching his hurried pace. Just keep quiet and don't call me that again, he mutters. Call you what, Daddy? She replies, loud enough that 2 bystanders spin their heads in alarm. Jace feels heat flood his cheeks. He can't believe this is happening. Smoke is still pouring from the crash site, and the authorities are shouting for people to clear the area. He half expects them to draw weapons on the monstrous 8-foot-tall woman who's clinging to his side. But confusion and chaos are on his side, Everyone's too busy with the wreckage and crowd control to chase after them just yet. He spots a narrow alley between two tall buildings. This way, he orders, guiding her by the elbow. She follows with surprising grace, each step as silent as a cat's. They dodge crates, slip past piles of debris, and soon find themselves away from the main thoroughfare. The sounds of the commotion fade behind them, replaced by the distant hum of machinery and the flicker of faulty neon signs overhead. "Let me see if you're injured," Jay says once they've put enough distance between themselves and the crash. He's not exactly sure why he's being so solicitous, but guilt gnaws at him. He found her half-conscious in that burning pod. He had no idea she was going to shift into this towering figure and start calling him bizarre titles. Her gaze pierces him, and she cocks her head, as though sizing him up. "My name is Varelli," she says at last, voice quieter now but still vibrating with that uncanny resonance. "And you are Jace. I heard one of the humans shout your name when you approached the fire." Her large golden eyes blink once, slowly. "So, Jace, Daddy, you do not seem pleased with my presence." He pinches the bridge of his nose, cursing under his breath. "You're not supposed to call me that. Daddy isn't. Look, it's not a formal title, or a rank, or anything like that. You've got it wrong." He can still feel his pulse hammering. The adrenaline of the rescue, combined with the intense closeness of this alien woman, is messing with his head. He has to stay focused. "Are you hurt? You were lying in a pile of twisted metal, so I'd like to know if you need medical attention." She extends one arm. It's slender but looks deceptively powerful, the bluish skin smooth except for those faint luminescent lines that pulse in time with her breathing. "I am not hurt," she says, her tone haughty. "Your handling of me was adequate." A hint of a smile touches her lips, revealing sharp canines. "Though I'd prefer if you did not drop me again. It would be a shame to have my first experience with your kind end with a broken limb." He releases a tense breath. "Right. Fine. So you're not injured. That's good. Now, about this entire calling me daddy thing. I told you," she interrupts, crossing her arms under her chest. "It is your rightful address. You saved me, you carried me, you performed the sacred rescue. That act is akin to claiming a mate in my culture. There is a word for it in the transmissions I studied before arriving on this planet, and that word is daddy." He fights the urge to slam his head into the nearest wall. This is absolutely not what he signed up for. He was just trying to help a wounded animal. Listen carefully. Daddy in our language is not some revered term for a mate or a rescuer. It's more like... He can't believe he's explaining this. It's something children call their fathers, or sometimes a never mind. He's not about to get into the more adult connotations. "It's not what you think, okay?" She frowns, glancing away. "Children call their sires by that term. But I am no child. Are you certain it cannot be used in a grown context?" Her tail, thin and whip-like, flicks behind her. Jace can't help but notice the subtle lines across her hips and thighs that glow with each shift of her stance. She's undeniably alluring. He shakes his head hard, pushing the thought away. "Look, we have to keep moving," he mutters. "The authorities will be all over that crash site, and if they catch you, an unregistered Felinari or whatever you are, without documentation, they'll assume I'm smuggling you. Or that you're some kind of bioweapon. And if you keep calling me that in public, it's going to attract the wrong kind of attention." Her eyes flash. "I am no weapon. My name is Varelli. My species is called Felinari, yes, and we are not criminals." Her chin lifts, a regal tilt. "Your laws do not concern me. I have chosen you as my caretaker." Jace rakes a hand through his short, dark hair. He can't help but notice that she's still standing dangerously close, the tip of her tail occasionally brushing his leg. Every time it makes contact, a spark of heat floods his body. He wonders if it's just adrenaline, or if she's releasing some sort of pheromone. He's heard rumors that certain alien species can do that, but he's never experienced it firsthand. "We need to find somewhere to hide until this blows over," he says, ignoring her statement. Then we'll figure out what to do next. She cocks her head again, feline ears twitching. If you wish me to remain hidden, I will obey. But do not mistake my compliance for submission. In my culture, the one who rescues becomes the one who must prove worthy of the bond. Do you understand? He has no idea what she's talking about, but he nods anyway. Fine. Just keep quiet and follow me. He risks a peek around the corner. The alley is dark, but a few flickering lights from overhead signs reveal a path leading deeper into the back streets. He motions for her to follow. She does, her footsteps eerily silent. Jace can hear the distant clamor of the crowd, sirens shouting. He knows the local security forces are probably locking down the area. If he gets caught with this shape-shifting alien who keeps calling him Daddy, he can only imagine the questions that'll follow. They make their way through winding alleys, past dumpsters, and broken-down service bots. The stench of rotten produce mingles with the metallic tang of old machinery. Varelli's nose wrinkles. She mutters something in her language, harsh consonants and soft vowels. Jace wonders if she's cursing him, or the environment. He can't help but notice that her body moves with an almost predatory grace, shoulders rolling, hips swaying, tail flicking behind her. It's disconcerting and mesmerizing all at once. Finally, they come upon a rusted door set into the side of a crumbling building. Jace tries the handle, finds it locked, and curses under his breath. He fiddles with a set of improvised lockpicks from his jacket pocket. Varelli watches him intently. What are you doing? She asks, leaning in so close he can feel her breath on his neck. Trying to get us inside, he says. I've used this place before. It's abandoned, but it'll keep us out of sight for a while. He can't focus with her so near. The lock clicks, and he shoves the door open. A musty smell greets them. The space inside is dark and cluttered, crates piled high, some broken open. Jace flicks on a small flashlight from his belt. The beam illuminates a makeshift storage area, dust dancing in the air. Stay close, he murmurs, stepping inside. Varelli follows, letting the door slam shut behind her. The sound echoes in the confined space. Are we safe here? She asks, scanning the shadows. As safe as we can be for now, Jace replies, heading deeper into the room. He finds a crate that looks sturdy enough and sits down, exhaling heavily. His heart is still racing, and he's starting to feel the sting of scrapes and bruises from the earlier chaos. He lifts his shirt slightly, wincing when he sees a nasty gash on his side. Great, he mutters. Varelli is at his side in an instant, kneeling so she's almost eye level with him, even though she's still towering. You are injured, she states. Let me see. She reaches out, her long fingers surprisingly gentle as they probe the torn flesh. Jace hisses in pain. It's fine, he insists, though it clearly isn't. I'll just patch it up when I get a chance. She makes a soft sound in her throat, a purr-like rumble that sends warmth coursing through him. In my culture, she begins, when one is bonded, the caretaker must ensure the other's well-being. Allow me. Without waiting for permission, she leans in, and he feels a strange tingling sensation around the wound. He jerks away instinctively, but her grip on his arm is firm. What are you doing? He demands, but his voice catches as he sees the luminescent lines along her wrist begin to glow brighter. A soft heat radiates from her palm, and he watches in stunned amazement as the bleeding slows, the edges of the gash knitting together slightly. It's not an instant healing, but it's definitely accelerated. He stares at her. You can heal? She nods. Not fully. But we Felinari share a mild regenerative property with those we have bonded to. It only works when there is a connection. Her eyes lock with his, and he feels his cheeks warm again. I have accepted you as my caretaker. Whether you wish it or not, our bond is forming. He pulls his arm free, feeling uneasy. I didn't ask for any bond, he mutters, looking away. I was just helping an injured cat, no offense. But you can't just show up, shift into this, and call me that word. Do you have any idea how bizarre this is for me? She blinks slowly, her expression unreadable. I do not intend to offend. On my homeworld, if one is rescued, it is tradition to pledge loyalty. The name you used, Daddy, I learned it from your transmissions. I believed it was the correct term to signify that you are the protector, the one who provides. Have I misunderstood its meaning so deeply? He sighs. Yes. You have. Trust me on this. It's not, people use it differently here. Especially if you're not actually a child. He rubs the back of his neck, unsure how to continue. Look, you're not from around here. There's a lot of cultural stuff you're missing. Virelli's gaze softens. Then teach me, she says simply. If I am to remain in your care, if I am to be on your world, I must learn your ways. Jace groans inwardly. He can't believe he's even considering going along with this. He knows he should turn her over to the authorities or at least alert some interspecies liaison. But something about her vulnerability, despite her towering, powerful form, tugs at him. And there's a tiny part of him that's curious about her, about this strange bond. Maybe it's the warmth still lingering in his side where she partially healed him. Maybe it's the memory of those big golden eyes staring at him when she was just a small, injured cat. Or maybe it's the fact that his life has been a lonely, chaotic mess for so long that having someone, anyone, look at him with unwavering devotion, even if it's misguided, is stirring up feelings he'd rather ignore. Fine, he says, exhaling sharply. But you have to stop calling me that in public. It's going to cause problems. He fixes her with a stern look. Promise me. She tilts her head, ears flicking. I promise I will attempt to restrain myself in the presence of others, though I do not understand why it is so shameful. Just trust me, he mutters. We'll lay low here for a few hours, then try to figure out our next move. I know a guy who might help us get off the grid. Her expression grows wary. I cannot leave this planet until I understand the circumstances of my crash. I was not supposed to land here like this. My vessel malfunctioned. He notices a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes, and it occurs to him that she might be just as lost and terrified as she is fierce. All right, he says more gently. We'll figure that out too. But first, we keep a low profile. He gestures to a corner with some crates stacked in a way that forms a sort of makeshift bench. Try to rest. I'll keep watch. She rises gracefully, crossing to the spot he indicated. The overhead light flickers, casting her silhouette in sharp relief. He can't help but notice the fluid way her body moves, every motion like a predator. The memory of her purring, of her body pressed against his, lingers. He shakes his head. This is insane. He's harboring an 8-foot alien who thinks he's her caretaker. But as ridiculous as it is, a part of him doesn't hate the feeling of being needed. He remains seated on the crate, mind whirling, while Virelli settles herself in the corner. She stretches out her long legs and folds her arms over her chest, her tail curling around her waist. The lines along her skin continue to pulse with a soft glow, reminding him that she's no ordinary alien. He tries not to stare, but it's difficult. Exhaustion starts to drag at him, and he closes his eyes for a moment, just to gather his thoughts. He'll need a plan. He can't just keep hiding forever. The authorities will be on high alert, and once word gets out about a shape-shifting alien woman calling someone Daddy, rumor alone might get them both killed or arrested. He's not sure when he dozes off, but he's startled awake by a soft touch on his shoulder. Instinct kicks in, and he jerks upright, reaching for the sidearm holstered under his jacket. Virelli is right there, crouched beside him, her glowing eyes full of concern. You were muttering in your sleep, she says softly, the resonance of her voice making his heart pound in an entirely different way. Are you in pain? He exhales, trying to calm his racing pulse. Just bad dreams. Don't worry about it. He rubs his eyes, noticing that the flickering overhead light has dimmed to near darkness. How long was I out? Not long, she replies. I kept watch. You seemed distressed. He stands, wincing at the ache in his muscles. I'm always distressed, he mutters, trying to inject some levity into his voice, though it falls flat. He checks his wrist calm, which is cracked and glitchy. We should probably get moving soon. Staying in one place too long isn't safe. She nods, rising to her full height in one fluid motion. I will follow your lead. But remember. She places a hand on his shoulder, her eyes intense. We are bonded. You must not abandon me. He tries to shrug off the weight of that statement. Right. Come on. He gestures for her to follow him back to the door. He'll need to reach out to a friend who owes him favors, someone who can forge documents or provide safe passage off-world. Or at least somewhere remote on this planet where they won't stand out. The thought of traveling with her in public sends a chill of anxiety through him. An 8-foot alien woman is not exactly inconspicuous, especially one who's so convinced he's her caretaker that she might blurt it out at any moment. They step out into the alley, the air still thick with the lingering smell of smoke and burning fuel from the crash. It's quieter now, though. The crowd has dispersed, the authorities likely having cordoned off the site. Neon lights sputter overhead, casting shifting colors across Varelli's skin, which seems to absorb and reflect them in a mesmerizing display. Jace forces himself to focus on the path ahead. He needs to navigate these backstreets to a safer district. Maybe if they can reach the old underpass near the city's edge, he can contact Dex, a hacker who once helped him smuggle medical supplies. Dex might not be happy to see him, but he's their best shot at forging documents that might let Varelli blend in, or at least not get shot on sight. They walk in silence for a while, Jace leading, Varelli close behind. He's hyper-aware of her presence, of the soft sound of her footsteps, of the occasional brush of her hand against his shoulder when they squeeze through a tight spot. Every time she touches him, a ripple of something, anticipation, tension, courses through him. He tries to ignore it. She's an alien. She's from some culture he knows nothing about. She's calling him a word that makes him want to crawl under a rock whenever he thinks about the misunderstanding it implies. And yet, there's a strange electricity between them. He's not proud of it, but he can't deny it either. He glances back at her as they reach a small, open courtyard lit by a single malfunctioning lamp. She's scanning the area with her cat-like gaze, ears perked, tail swishing behind her. He notices the faint swirl of luminescence that glides along her collarbone, shimmering like liquid moonlight. You all right? He asks, keeping his voice low. She meets his eyes. Yes. It's just, this place is so different from my home. The sounds, the smells. Everything feels hostile. Except you. She hesitates. You saved me, even though you do not understand me. He doesn't have a good response to that. I couldn't just let you die in a burning pod. He mutters. I'm not a monster. Her lips curl in a small smile. No, you are not. For a moment, her expression softens in a way that makes his chest tighten. Then, suddenly, she straightens, ears flicking. Someone is coming. Jace tenses. He hears footsteps echoing off the walls. More than one set. He gestures for Varelli to follow him behind a stack of old crates. They crouch, press close. He can smell her again, a faint, exotic scent that makes his head spin. He fights the distraction and focuses on the approaching voices. Two men, from the sound of it, speaking in hushed tones. Did you see the size of that thing? It was huge, one says, sounding spooked. They said it ran off with some guy into the alleys. Yeah, and now the boss wants it found, the other replies. They're offering a bounty. Alien shapeshifters fetch a good price on the black market, especially if they're rare. Jace curses under his breath. He knows exactly the type of scum these two are, bounty hunters or black market traders who traffic in exotic species. If they catch sight of Varelli, they'll try to capture her and sell her to the highest bidder. His stomach knots at the thought. He glances at her, and she's looking back at him with a mixture of anger and fear. She's clearly overheard the conversation as well. They stay still, barely breathing, until the men move on, their footsteps fading. Jace exhales, his heart pounding. We've got to get out of here, now, he whispers. Varelli nods. He takes her hand, surprised at how natural it feels, and leads her in the opposite direction, making sure to keep to the shadows. They slip through a half-collapsed gate and into a narrow corridor that leads toward the old underpass. When they emerge from the corridor, they find themselves at the edge of a sprawling industrial zone. Rusted metal scaffolding stretches overhead, and massive pipes hiss with escaping steam. Jace spots a broken sign that used to read, Skyway Station, though now it's half gone. The underpass is below, a dark tunnel that leads into the lower levels of the city. If Dex is still operating out of the same spot, it'll be somewhere down there. As they descend a flight of crumbling steps, Virelli's tail curls around Jace's waist briefly for balance, making him stumble. He swallows hard, trying not to think about the warmth of her body. The tension between them crackles in the damp air. He can sense her nervousness, and maybe she can sense his. The Felinari, from what little he's heard, are highly empathetic. He wonders if she can feel his racing pulse, his conflicted thoughts. He tries to push them aside. They have bigger problems. Down in the underpass, it's almost pitch black except for the faint glow of neon graffiti on the walls. Jace flicks on his flashlight again. The beam catches movement, a skittering shape that might be a feral bot or some small creature. He motions for Virelli to stay close. She does, placing a hand on his shoulder as they navigate the debris-strewn corridor. It smells of mildew, rust, and old oil. The faint drip of water echoes. They finally come to a metal hatch set into the floor. Jace kneels, running his fingers along the edges. If Dex is still down here, this should be the entrance to his workshop, he says quietly. He taps a code into a panel, but it's unresponsive. Damn it, he mutters, giving it a quick whack. Nothing. He tries again, but the system is clearly offline. Virelli leans over him, her presence enveloping him. Shall I try? She asks, her voice low. Before he can protest, she presses her palm against the panel. He watches in awe as the luminescent lines on her arms shift and glow. There's a crackle of energy, and the panel sparks to life for just a moment, enough to register her touch. Then the hatch groans and slides open an inch, letting out a puff of stale air. He gives her a surprised look. You can interface with technology? She shrugs one shoulder. A small ability. I can generate a mild electromagnetic field. It is useful for disabling or enabling certain mechanisms. She looks away, almost shy. I hope it was not presumptuous to attempt. Jace exhales, feeling a hint of admiration. No, that's good. Thanks. He wedges his fingers under the edge of the hatch and pries it the rest of the way open. A ladder descends into darkness. He climbs down first, careful of his footing. The rungs are slick with condensation. Virelli follows, the metal creaking under her weight, but she's graceful enough to make it down without much noise. They find themselves in a cramped tunnel that leads to a larger chamber. The faint hum of machinery is the first sign that Dex might still be here. Jace follows the sound, shining his flashlight around. They round a corner and see a dimly lit workspace filled with monitors, cables, and half-assembled drones. At the center, hunched over a flickering console, is a short, wiry figure with goggles perched on his forehead. Dex whirls around at the intrusion, brandishing a makeshift energy pistol. Whoa, easy! Jace calls out, raising his hands. It's me, Dex. Don't shoot. Dex squints, then lowers the pistol. Jace? I thought you were dead. His eyes shift to Virelli, and he almost drops the weapon in surprise. What the? Who's your giant friend? Jace steps forward, forcing a calm he doesn't feel. Long story. I need your help, Dex. We're in trouble. She's not exactly registered. And there are people after her. Dex sets the pistol on a nearby table and rubs his temples. You always bring me the best problems, don't you? He eyes Virelli warily. You're not gonna rip my head off, are you? Virelli lifts her chin, crossing her arms. I have no intention of harming you. Unless you threaten him. She gestures to Jace, and Dex's gaze snaps between them. He opens his mouth to ask a question, then apparently thinks better of it. All right, Dex sighs. Let's hear it. But if you bring the entire colonial enforcement, or some black market thugs down here, I'm tossing you both out. Got it? Jace nods. I just need a place to lay low for a bit, and some forged credentials. Maybe a custom ID chip that says Varelli here is a licensed xenolinguist or something. Something that'll keep the authorities off our backs. Dex glances at Varelli's 8-foot frame and alien features, clearly skeptical. That's gonna be tricky, but I'll see what I can do. He turns back to his console, muttering under his breath as he starts typing commands. You owe me big for this, Jace. Jace gives a humorless laugh. Yeah, I know. He can feel Varelli standing behind him, her presence almost a tangible warmth. He remembers how she healed his wound, the electric sensation of her touch. His emotions are a tangled mess. He's relieved they found Dex, but he also knows this is just the beginning of their problems. While Dex works, Jace leans against the wall, arms crossed, glancing occasionally at Varelli. She paces around the cramped space, examining the drones and gadgets with curious eyes. Every now and then, she looks at him, and there's an unspoken tension in her gaze. He wonders if she can sense his conflicted feelings. He wonders if she feels them too, if this so-called bond goes both ways. He tries not to think about it. He needs to focus on the immediate crisis. After a few minutes, Dex spins in his chair. All right, I can set up a basic ID for her, but forging the biosignatures to pass a full scan is another story. That'll take time. And you'll need to slip into the central registration node if you want to embed it properly in the system. Otherwise, it won't hold up under official scrutiny. Jace frowns. That's risky. Security's tight around the node. Dex shrugs. Your call. But if you're serious about not getting caught, that's the only way. Or you can try to sneak off-world and risk border checks? Your funeral. Varelli steps closer, her tail flicking. If it is required, I will do whatever is necessary. I do not wish to bring harm upon Jace or myself. Dex raises an eyebrow. She talks like she's ready to go to war. Jace smirks. You have no idea. He rubs his chin, thinking. We can't stay on this planet. The crash was too public, and we've already got bounty hunters sniffing around. Off-world might be the best option, even if it's a gamble. Dex taps a few keys, pulling up a holographic star map. I can try to get you a route to a less regulated sector. Maybe the outer rings. But it's not going to be comfortable, and it'll cost you. Jace sighs. I figured as much. I'll get you the credits. Just set it up. He glances at Varelli. You okay with that? Leaving the planet? We can try to figure out who sabotaged your vessel later. She inclines her head. If it means I can remain by your side, I will go. She hesitates, then adds softly, I trust you, Jace. The sincerity in her voice knocks the wind out of him. He's not used to being trusted, certainly not this openly. He nods, swallowing the lump in his throat. All right. Dex, get us a safe route. And we'll lay low until it's ready. We'll do the forging we need, then we're gone. Dex rubs his hands together, eyeing them both. You two better not bring a platoon of soldiers down here, or I swear. Relax, Jace says. We'll be ghosts. He stands and motions for Varelli to follow him deeper into the workshop. There's a small side room Dex sometimes uses as a crash pad. It's cluttered, but it has a door that locks. We can rest in here. Dex will call me if something comes up. Varelli ducks under the low doorway, her ears brushing the frame. The room is cramped, barely enough space for the two of them. She inspects the surroundings, a tattered cot, a flickering lamp, piles of spare parts. It is functional, she says diplomatically. Jace snorts. Yeah, Dex isn't known for his hospitality. He locks the door behind them, then leans against it, exhaling. We'll wait here until he's got the route. Then we'll slip off-world before the authorities or those bounty hunters catch wind of where we are. Varelli studies him in the dim light. You seem troubled. He forces a short laugh. You think? Running a hand through his hair, he tries to figure out how to explain the million conflicting emotions roiling inside him. Look, Varelli, I don't know what your customs are. I don't know why you think we're bonded, or why you keep calling me, Well, you know. But I do know that the rest of the galaxy isn't going to care about your traditions. They're just going to see an unregistered alien with weird powers and a big price tag. So yeah, I'm a little on edge. She steps closer, her tall frame looming over him, but there's no menace in her posture. Instead, she seems almost gentle. She places a hand on his cheek, and he can't help but notice how soft her skin is. I am sorry for the trouble I have caused you. My intention was never to bring you harm or fear. In my culture, to be rescued is to form a sacred bond of gratitude and loyalty. I assumed you understood. But it appears we are from very different worlds. He swallows hard, feeling the warmth of her touch. We are, he admits. I just didn't expect any of this. She nods, letting her hand drop. Nor did I. But I am here now, and so are you. Perhaps we can find a path that serves us both. You do not have to accept my customs, but please understand that to me, you are the one who saved my life. I cannot simply ignore that. He scrubs a hand over his face, fighting a surge of conflicting emotions. All right. Let's just get through the next few days without getting killed. Then we'll figure out the rest. He gestures to the cot. You can take that. I'll find a spot on the floor. She arches an eyebrow. We cannot share it? It appears large enough for two if we... He cuts her off, heat rising in his cheeks. No, no, it's fine. You take it. A flicker of amusement crosses her features. As you wish. She lowers herself onto the cot, which creaks under her weight. Even half-curled, she takes up most of it. He tries not to stare at the way her limbs fold so elegantly, the tail curling around her waist. He busies himself with clearing a patch of floor, arranging some discarded tarps into a makeshift bed. When he finally lies down, the lamp flickers, casting shifting shadows on the walls. He closes his eyes, but he can sense Vareli's presence across the small room, her quiet breathing, the faint glow of her markings. Sleep doesn't come easily. His mind is a storm of thoughts, the crash, the bond, the bizarre misunderstanding that led her to call him that mortifying word. And under it all, a nagging awareness of her physicality, her alien beauty, and the magnetic pull he can't quite deny. He tells himself he's just exhausted, that once they're safe, he'll figure out a way to sever this bond or at least clarify that he's not her caretaker in the sense she believes. But a small voice inside him wonders if, deep down, he actually likes the idea of being needed, of being important to someone, even if it's an alien from a culture he knows nothing about. He tries to banish the thought, focusing instead on the plan: get documents, find a ship, leave the planet. Everything else is secondary. Eventually, he drifts into a restless sleep, the sound of Vareli's gentle breathing lulling him. His dreams are filled with flashes of golden eyes, shimmering skin, and the echo of that single word she spoke so boldly in front of everyone, Daddy. He wakes with a jolt, heart pounding, unsure if he's more embarrassed or intrigued by the memory. He rolls over, glancing at the cot. Vareli is already awake, watching him with a steady gaze. The lamp has died, leaving only the faint glow of her markings to light the room. You were dreaming again, she says softly. He sits up, rubbing his eyes. I dream a lot. Don't worry about it. She nods, unfolding herself from the cot with a languid stretch. Dex has been moving around outside for some time. Perhaps he has news for us. She moves toward the door, then pauses, glancing back at Jace. If you wish to speak of your dreams, I will listen. He looks away, uncomfortable with the offer of intimacy. I'm fine, he mutters. Let's see what Dex has got for us. Standing, he brushes off the dust from his clothes and unlocks the door. They step out into the workshop, where Dex is hunched over a console, typing furiously. He looks up when they approach, pushing his goggles onto his forehead. Morning, lovebirds, he says, voice dripping with sarcasm. Jace opens his mouth to retort, but Dex plows on. I've got a lead on a cargo vessel heading to the Outer Rings in 2 days. The captain's not exactly squeaky clean, so he might be willing to look the other way if you pay him enough. You'll need those forged IDs, though. If you get scanned at any official checkpoint, you're done. Varelli steps forward, her posture regal despite the cramped surroundings. Thank you for your assistance. We are in your debt. Dex snorts. Yeah, well, Jace's credit is good with me, for now. Just don't do anything stupid that leads the entire colonial fleet to my doorstep. He taps the screen. I'll set you up with a meeting tonight. You can talk to the captain in a dive bar on the east side of the city. If all goes well, you'll be on his ship by tomorrow night. Then you can skip this rock and be someone else's problem. Jace folds his arms, ignoring Dex's barb. Fine. We'll meet him. Where's the bar? Dex rattles off an address and name. It's called the Drifting Ember. Shady place. Fits you perfectly. Jace nods. Thanks, Dex. He glances at Varelli, who's studying a pile of spare drone parts with curious fascination. We'll get out of your hair soon. Dex waves him off, returning to his console. Just don't forget to transfer the credits. I'm not running a charity. Jace motions for Varelli to follow him to a corner of the workshop where they can talk without Dex's commentary. All right, he says quietly. We'll go to this bar tonight, talk to the captain, and see if we can buy our way onto his ship. We just have to lay low until then. Varelli nods, her golden eyes meeting his. And once we are off-world? He exhales. We'll figure it out. Maybe find a place where you can make contact with your people or figure out what happened to your vessel. One step at a time. He tries to sound confident, but he feels the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. Everything is happening so fast, and the tension between them hasn't lessened. If anything, it's growing stronger. She places a hand on his shoulder. I trust you, Jace, she says, her voice resonating in a way that makes his stomach flutter. I will follow wherever you lead. He clears his throat, stepping back to break the contact. Let's not get all sentimental. We still have a lot to do. But his words sound hollow, even to him. There's a part of him that wants to accept her trust, to let himself be whatever she needs. He quickly pushes the thought away. It's too complicated. He's not ready to admit that he might actually care about this alien woman beyond just helping her survive. They spend the rest of the day in Dex's workshop, avoiding each other's eyes whenever the tension flares. At one point, Jace sets about cleaning and reassembling an old pulse rifle Dex had lying around, needing something to occupy his hands. Varelli wanders around, examining various gadgets with a childlike curiosity. Occasionally, she asks him questions about human technology, and he answers as best he can, relieved to have neutral topics to discuss. As evening approaches, Dex finally announces the time for the meeting. The captain will be at the Drifting Ember in an hour. You two better hustle. Jace thanks him again, transferring a chunk of credits to Dex's account. Then he and Varelli slip back into the underpass tunnels, climbing the ladder to the surface. Night has fallen on the city, and neon lights flicker across the skyline. The air is cooler, and the streets are less crowded, though still dotted with people wandering or loitering. They move carefully, keeping to side streets. Jace's eyes constantly sweep their surroundings, wary of any sign of bounty hunters or law enforcement. Varelli remains close, sometimes brushing his arm or shoulder as they walk. Each touch sends a jolt through him, a reminder that she's real, that he's now entangled in her life. At last they arrive at the Drifting Ember. It's a dingy, smoke-filled bar nestled between two towering apartment blocks. A flickering neon sign shaped like a stylized flame hangs above the entrance. The thrum of bass-heavy music reverberates through the walls. Jace glances at Varelli. Stay close, and try not to draw attention, he mutters, though he knows it's a futile request. She's 8 feet tall with glowing markings, after all. She just nods. They step inside, immediately assaulted by the smell of cheap liquor, sweat, and stale air. The lighting is low, the corners shrouded in shadow. Patrons of various species huddle around tables, nursing drinks or engaging in hushed conversations. A few heads turn when Varelli enters, but most people seem too absorbed in their own troubles to care. Jace scans the room, spotting a stocky man with a cybernetic arm sitting in a corner booth. He matches the description Dex gave. The man is nursing a tall glass of something green, occasionally tapping a datapad on the table. Jace nudges Varelli and heads over. The man looks up as they approach, eyes flicking between Jace and the towering alien woman. You the ones Dex mentioned? He asks, voice gruff. Jace nods, sliding into the booth. Varelli stands beside him, folding her arms. We need passage off-world, discreet, Jace says, keeping his tone businesslike. The man grunts, leaning back. Captain Harlow. And discreet costs extra. You got the credits? Jace pulls out a small chip, sliding it across the table. There's a down payment. More once we're on your ship. Harlow picks up the chip, plugging it into his datapad. He nods when the amount flashes across the screen. Not bad. So you're the big, secret cargo Dex said was so urgent? He peers up at Varelli. You some kind of bodyguard? Or a rare commodity? Varelli's eyes narrow. Jace interjects before she can speak. She's with me, that's all you need to know. We just need to get to the outer rings, no questions asked. Harlow shrugs. Fine by me, as long as you pay. I don't care if she's your pet, your girlfriend, or your science experiment. He takes a swig of his drink, eyeing Varelli's tall frame. Just don't cause trouble on my ship. Jace bristles at the insinuations but keeps his cool. When do we leave? Tomorrow night, Harlow replies. Dock 17, Sector C. Be there on time, or I'm gone. He slides the chip back. Keep that safe. We'll finalize payment once you're on board. Jace nods. Deal. They stand, the transaction concluded. Harlow returns to his drink as though nothing happened. Jace glances at Varelli, who looks tense, her ears angled backward. Let's go, he mutters. They weave through the crowd, heading for the exit. Once outside, he exhales, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. They have a plan now. One more day, and they'll be off this planet, away from the immediate danger. Varelli remains silent until they're halfway down the block. Then she stops, looking down at him with a troubled expression. He spoke of me as if I were an object. A pet or an experiment. Do your people always view others this way? Jace grimaces. Not everyone. But scumbags like Harlow, yeah, they only see money or risk. Don't let it get to you. She stares at the pavement, tail lashing. It angers me that he would speak to you in such a manner, as if you keep me in chains. I do not like it. He almost smiles at the protective edge in her voice. I'm used to dealing with his type. We just need him to get us off-world. Then we never have to see him again. She lifts her gaze, those golden eyes full of fierce determination. If he tries to harm you, I will not hesitate to. Jace cuts her off. I know. I appreciate the sentiment, but we can't afford to make enemies. Not right now. He starts walking again, and she falls into step beside him. He can feel the tension radiating off her, and a part of him is oddly touched that she's worried about how people speak to him. They head back toward Dex's workshop, but Jace decides to take a different route, wary of being followed. The city streets are eerily quiet, the neon glow painting everything in lurid colors. A couple of drunken revelers stumble out of a club, ignoring them. A small group of rough-looking individuals lean against the wall, passing around a bottle, but they don't give chase. When they reach a deserted intersection, Varelli stops suddenly, grabbing Jace's arm. What is that? She whispers, pointing to a small group of armed figures at the far end of the street. They're wearing dark armor, scanning the area with handheld devices. Jace's stomach twists. Colonial enforcement. They must be doing sweeps after the crash. He tugs Varelli into a nearby alley, pressing her against the wall. His heart races. If those scanners detect her unique biology, they're done. The narrow alley is dimly lit by a single flickering light. She's right in front of him, so close he can feel the warmth of her body. Her tail curls around his leg in alarm. They might come this way, she murmurs, her breath ghosting over his cheek. He glances at her, then at the mouth of the alley. They need to hide. But the only cover is a stack of crates. He hears footsteps approaching, the clink of armor. Without thinking, he pulls Varelli into a corner, pressing his back to the wall and dragging her close so they're partially concealed by the crates. She's practically enveloping him, her tall frame bent to fit in the tight space. "Stay quiet," he breathes. She nods, eyes wide, ears pinned back. They hold still, listening as the armored figures pass by. One of them pauses, shining a light into the alley. Jace's heart hammers. He can smell Varelli's alien scent, that intoxicating mix of musk and something sweet. He can feel every contour of her body pressed against his, her chest rising and falling with each tense breath. The officer's light sweeps across the alley, landing briefly on the crates. Jace holds his breath, praying they're not spotted. After a moment, the light moves on. The footsteps fade. He waits a few more seconds before exhaling in relief. "That was close," he mutters. Varelli doesn't move. She's staring at him, her face inches from his. "Your heart is pounding," she whispers. He tries to shrug, but the motion is awkward in the confined space. "Yeah, well, almost getting caught by the authorities will do that." But he knows it's not just the authorities. It's her. The closeness, the tension, the undeniable pull. He can see the faint luminescent lines on her neck and collarbone glowing brighter. Her eyes flick to his lips, then back to his eyes. "Jace," she murmurs, voice trembling slightly. "I can feel your fear, and something else." Her tail tightens around his leg, not in an aggressive way, but more like she's anchoring herself. He swallows hard. "Look, we should keep moving," he says, though he doesn't actually move to leave. His body feels rooted to the spot, trapped between the wall and her. The memory of her calling him that word in front of everyone, the swirl of shame and secret fascination, collides in his mind. He can't give in to whatever is happening here. It's too complicated, too alien. And yet, he can't deny the electricity that arcs between them, especially now that they're practically locked together. She leans in, and for a second, he thinks she might kiss him. Instead, she nuzzles her cheek against his, a gesture that feels both feline and deeply intimate. He sucks in a breath, his hand coming up to rest on her shoulder, unsure whether to push her away or pull her closer. She makes a soft sound, almost a purr, that vibrates against his skin. "Varelli," he whispers, trying to keep his voice steady. "We can't." "Not here." She nods, pulling back slightly, though her body still presses against his. "I know," she says. "But this bond, it's growing stronger. I can sense your emotions. It's confusing. I do not understand everything, but I feel it." He closes his eyes, pressing his forehead against hers briefly. "Yeah," he admits, voice tight. "Me too. Let's just get back to Dex's place. We'll figure it out there." She takes a moment to breathe him in, then steps back, letting him slip free of the corner. He leads her out of the alley, scanning the street to make sure the colonial enforcement has moved on. They continue their cautious journey, a new tension thrumming between them, as if the near discovery by the authorities jolted something to the surface that neither of them can ignore. By the time they make it back to Dex's hatch, Jace's mind is spinning. The plan is straightforward enough: hide until tomorrow night, then board Harlow's ship and get off this planet. But the rest, this bond, the intensity between them, the cultural misunderstandings, it's all spiraling out of control. He can feel Varelli's gaze on him as they climb down the ladder, her presence like a physical weight against his back. Dex is dozing in his chair when they enter the workshop, a half-empty mug of something foul-smelling on the console. He jerks awake, blinking blearily at them. "You're back. Good. No sign of trouble, I hope?" "Nothing we couldn't handle," Jace replies, trying to keep his tone neutral. He can feel Varelli standing behind him, silent and watchful. Dex yawns, stretching. "Well, make yourselves comfortable. Tomorrow night's your big date with Destiny or whatever. I'm gonna get some sleep." He trudges off to a corner of the workshop, curling up on a battered couch. Within minutes, he's snoring softly. Jace turns to Varelli. "We can use the same room as before. It's cramped, but it's private." She nods. They slip inside, shutting the door behind them. The single lamp is still dead, so the only illumination is the faint glow from her markings. He can't help but notice how they pulse softly, highlighting the curves of her body, the angle of her cheekbones, the length of her ears. She sits on the cot, tail draped across her lap, watching him. He stands awkwardly by the wall, unsure what to say. The memory of her nuzzling him in the alley burns in his mind. He clears his throat, searching for a safe topic. So, tomorrow night. If everything goes according to plan, we'll be off this planet. She nods slowly. Yes. And then what? He exhales, leaning against the wall. I don't know. We'll look for a place where we can figure out who sabotaged your ship, or if it was just an accident. Maybe find a contact from your species who can help you. The thought of her leaving once she's safe tugs at something inside him, but he ignores it. She watches him with those intense golden eyes. And what of our bond? Does that end when we leave this planet? There's a faint tremor in her voice. He presses his lips together, torn. He doesn't want to mislead her, but he also doesn't fully understand his own feelings. Look, I still don't really understand this bond you keep talking about. All I did was pull you out of a crash. In my culture, that's just basic decency. Not a lifelong commitment. Her ears droop slightly, and the glow of her markings dims. I see. On my world, it is more than that. It is everything. She stands, her tall frame nearly brushing the ceiling. But I know you do not share our ways. Still, I cannot deny what I feel. He takes a step closer, despite himself. I'm not saying I don't feel anything. This is complicated. I've never had someone look at me the way you do. Like you actually want me around. I'm not used to it. Her expression softens, and she lifts a hand to cup his cheek. He doesn't pull away this time. Then we can be uncertain together, she says quietly. We can discover what this bond means in a way that suits us both. He closes his eyes, letting out a shaky breath. Her touch is like fire, melting his defenses. All right, he whispers, not sure what he's agreeing to, only that he can't stand the idea of pushing her away any longer. She leans in, and their lips meet in a tentative kiss, soft at first, then more urgent. He can taste the faint metallic tang of her alien physiology, mixed with something sweet and intoxicating. Her arms encircle him, pulling him close, and he surrenders to the heat that surges between them. It's messy, a clash of species, cultures, and emotions. But it feels real in a way he can't remember feeling for a long time. They break apart, breathing hard. She presses her forehead to his, eyes half-lidded. You are trembling, she murmurs. He gives a short, breathless laugh. Yeah, well, this is a lot to handle. His heart is pounding so loud he wonders if Dex can hear it in the other room. She nods, stepping back slightly to give him space. We should rest. Tomorrow will be dangerous. He clears his throat, trying to regain some composure. Right. You take the cot again. I'll, stay on the floor. She hesitates, then nods. As you wish. She lies down, curling her long limbs into the limited space. He gathers the tarps on the floor once more, lying down a short distance away, though the small room doesn't allow for much separation. In the darkness, he listens to the sound of her breathing. His lips still tingle from the kiss, his mind swirling with the implications. He knows he shouldn't let himself get so close to someone, especially an alien who believes they're bound together by a sacred tradition. But he can't help it. For the first time in a long time, he feels something other than cynicism or apathy. He feels alive. He falls asleep eventually, dreams swirling with images of glowing skin and golden eyes. When he wakes, he finds Virelli already up, standing by the door, her posture tense. Dex is stirring, she says, glancing at him. It is nearly time. He sits up, scrubbing a hand over his face. Right. Let's get ready. He stands, noticing how she watches his every move, as if memorizing him. He wonders if she's afraid he'll disappear. He tries to give her a reassuring nod, though he's not sure how convincing it is. They exit the room to find Dex rummaging through a pile of junk, muttering curses. He glances at them. Morning, or whatever time it is. Your ride's still on schedule. Better head out soon. Security's gonna be tight, so you'll need to slip past the main gates. Jace nods, slinging a small pack over his shoulder. He's gathered a few supplies, mostly rations and a spare energy cell for his pistol. Thanks, Dex. You've done more than enough. Dex waves a hand. Yeah? Just don't get killed. And don't lead the law back here. Varelli inclines her head. We are grateful for your assistance. Dex looks at her for a moment, as if he wants to say something, but then just shrugs. They climb out of the hatch, returning to the city's underbelly. The sun is just beginning to rise, painting the buildings in pale morning light. Jace leads Varelli toward the spaceport district, sticking to back routes and avoiding main streets. He can feel the tension mounting with each step. If they're caught now, everything falls apart. When they finally reach Dock 17 in Sector C, the hustle of spaceport workers is already in full swing. Cargo crates are being loaded onto ships, crews shouting instructions. Jace scans the area, spotting Harlow's vessel, a battered freighter with scorched hull plating. The name stenciled on the side is barely legible. He nudges Varelli, and they head that way. Harlow stands at the base of the loading ramp, arms folded. He looks them over with a bored expression. You're early. Good. Let's get this over with. He jerks his head, and they follow him up the ramp into the freighter's dimly lit interior. The smell of stale air and engine oil hits them. Jace tries not to show his distaste. They pass through cramped corridors until they reach a small cargo hold outfitted with a couple of makeshift bunks. Harlow turns, holding out a hand. The rest of the payment. Jace transfers the credits, and Harlow's datapad pings. He nods. Welcome aboard. Don't cause trouble, don't go snooping around, and we'll be at the outer rings in about 4 days. Varelli studies the dingy surroundings with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. Thank you, she says, though her tone is guarded. Harlow grunts, turning to leave. Strap in or whatever. We're taking off soon. They're left alone in the small cargo hold, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck plates. Jace sets his pack down, letting out a slow breath. We made it, he says, though relief is tempered by the knowledge that they still have a long way to go. Varelli steps closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. Yes, she agrees. And now we face the unknown together. He covers her hand with his, meeting her gaze. Together, he echoes, feeling that strange warmth in his chest again. The bond, whatever it is, seems to pulse between them, drawing them closer despite all logic. And for once, he doesn't resist it. They secure themselves for takeoff, the ship's engines roaring to life. As the freighter lifts off, Jace feels the subtle shift of gravity. He glances at Varelli, who is staring out a small viewport at the receding skyline. A flicker of longing crosses her face, and he wonders if she's thinking about her homeworld. He reaches out, lacing his fingers with hers. She looks at him in surprise, then smiles softly, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. Neither of them speak as the planet's surface shrinks away, replaced by the vast expanse of space. The hum of the freighter's engine steadies, and they begin their journey to the outer rings. Jace's mind swirls with questions about what awaits them. Danger, almost certainly. More misunderstandings, no doubt. But there's also the possibility of discovery, of forging a connection that transcends their differences. They remain hand in hand, watching the stars blur past as the ship makes its ascent. In the silent, pressurized cabin, he can hear her heartbeat, feel the subtle vibration of her skin against his. The memory of her calling him that mortifying word in public lingers, but now it's colored by a strange affection. She might still misunderstand the nuances, but he can't deny the sense of belonging it stirs in him, no matter how bizarre it sounds. Time passes in a blur. The ship's corridors are cramped, the air stale, but it's better than being shot at or hunted on the streets. They spend most of the first day in the cargo hold, talking in low voices or simply sitting in companionable silence. Jace shows her how to operate some of the human tech on board, and she demonstrates small feats of her electromagnetic ability, lighting up a broken console with a soft hum of power. The bond between them feels tangible, a current that flows back and forth, strengthened by each shared moment. On the second day, tension among the crew becomes apparent. Harlow and his men are on edge, snapping at each other over engine troubles. Jace keeps his head down, aware that any confrontation could jeopardize their passage. Virelli senses the hostility, her ears twitching whenever the crew passes by. She clings closer to Jace, as if worried they might try to separate them. When evening falls, or what passes for evening on a spaceship, Jace and Virelli settle on a pair of storage crates in the cargo hold. The overhead lights flicker occasionally, casting their shadows and restless patterns on the walls. She's been quiet, more so than usual. He nudges her gently. "Everything okay?" She looks up, her golden eyes reflecting the faint light. "I am uncertain," she admits. "We have escaped the immediate danger, but I do not know what awaits us in the outer rings. And this bond, you still do not fully accept it. I sense your hesitation." He exhales, resting his elbows on his knees. "It's not that I reject it," he says carefully. "It's just, I'm trying to figure it out. In my world, you don't usually form a lifelong bond with someone you just met, someone who was literally an alien cat a moment ago." He offers a rueful smile. "I'm sorry if that sounds insensitive." She shakes her head. "No, I understand. Our worlds are different. In my culture, we believe in destiny, in the power of a single moment to define a lifetime. But I see that your people prefer to build trust gradually, to test and question before committing." He nods, grateful for her understanding. "Exactly. But that doesn't mean I don't feel something. I just..." He hesitates, struggling to put it into words. "I've lost people before. I've learned not to get attached, because it always ends badly. But with you, I can't seem to help it." She reaches out, placing a hand on his cheek. Her touch is cool, soothing. "Then perhaps we can meet somewhere in the middle. I will not demand you accept my customs fully, and you will not deny the possibility that this bond is real. We can learn each other's ways slowly." He leans into her hand, closing his eyes for a moment. "Yeah," he whispers. "I'd like that." A soft smile curves her lips. "Then we are agreed." She scoots closer, resting her head on his shoulder. Her tail curls around his waist, and he wraps an arm around her, drawing her into a gentle embrace. For a while, they just sit there, the hum of the engines and the distant clank of machinery forming a steady background rhythm. It's the closest thing to peace either of them has felt in a long time. Their moment is cut short by a sudden jolt that rocks the entire ship. Virelli jerks upright, ears flattening. Jace stands, bracing himself against the support beam. The lights flicker violently. A distant alarm starts to wail. He hears shouting from the corridor. "What now?" he growls, moving toward the hatch that leads to the main passage. Virelli follows, tail lashing anxiously. They step into the corridor, where crew members are rushing back and forth. Harlow appears, cursing under his breath as he slams a panel shut. "Pirates!" Harlow spits, glaring at Jace. "We got flagged by a raiding vessel. They're jamming our systems. We're dead in the water unless we can break free." Jace's heart sinks. Space pirates in the outer rings are notoriously ruthless. If they board, they'll take everything of value, including Virelli. He can't let that happen. "What can we do?" he asks, voice tight. Harlow jerks a thumb toward a ladder leading up. "Get to the turret controls, see if you can get a shot off. I'll try to reboot the engines." Jace nods, turning to Virelli. "Stay here. Or better yet, hide somewhere. If they board, you'll be safer out of sight." She looks insulted by the suggestion. "I will not hide while you risk your life." He opens his mouth to argue, but another jolt rocks the ship. The alarm's wail intensifies. "Fine," he snaps, heading for the ladder. She follows him without hesitation. They climb to the upper deck, stumbling as the ship lurches again. Jace finds the door to the turret access. He yanks it open, revealing a cramped compartment with a manual targeting system. Virelli slides in after him, her tall frame barely fitting. He drops into the gunner's seat, activating the controls. The viewport lights up, revealing the blackness of space dotted with the harsh gleam of a hostile vessel. It's sleek, bristling with weapons, and it's already firing on them. He grits his teeth, gripping the targeting sticks. Come on, he mutters, waiting for the turret's power to cycle up. Virelli braces herself against the wall, watching him intently. She can sense his tension, the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Tell me how I can help, she says, scanning the controls. He barely has time to think. If you can do that electromagnetic trick of yours, maybe you can stabilize the turret's power or keep it from overloading. She nods, pressing a hand to the console. Her markings glow brighter, and Jace feels a hum beneath his fingertips. The turret's readouts flicker, then stabilize, giving him a clear targeting reticle. Got it, he mutters, swinging the turret around to lock onto the pirate ship. He squeezes the triggers, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts. They streak through space, some hitting the pirate vessel shields, causing them to flare. Shields holding at 80%. Virelli reports, gleaning the data from the console. We must weaken them. Jace curses under his breath. I'm trying. He lines up another shot, heart pounding. If they can't drive the pirates off, it's only a matter of time before they get boarded. Another jolt rattles the freighter, and he sees sparks fly across the console. Virelli winces, struggling to maintain her electromagnetic link. Harlow's voice crackles over the intercom. We've lost main thrusters. I can't outrun them. You gotta take out their weapons or we're done. Jace grits his teeth. Working on it. He fires another volley, this time aiming for the pirate vessel's gun batteries. The shots slam into the enemy shields, dimming them further. The pirate ship responds with a barrage of laser fire that scorches the freighter's hull. The turret shakes, and Jace tastes blood where he's bitten his lip. Virelli lets out a sharp cry as a surge of energy crackles through the console. She rips her hand away, smoke curling from her palm. The power is overloading. Jace spares her a quick, worried glance. You okay? She nods, grimacing. I will manage. Keep firing. He locks onto what appears to be a weak spot in the pirate ship's shield generator. Come on, he growls, pulling the triggers again. The turret's cannons unleash a concentrated burst, and this time, the pirate vessel's shields flicker, then collapse in a shower of sparks. He sees a direct hit on one of their weapon arrays, sending debris spiraling into space. Yes! He shouts, adrenaline surging. But the pirate ship isn't done. It fires back, scoring a direct hit on the freighter's hull. The impact slams Jace against the seat, rattling his bones. Damn it! He checks the readouts. We've lost partial hull integrity. If they hit us again, we might vent atmosphere. Virelli presses her hand to the console once more, ignoring the burn on her palm. I will try to disrupt their next shot. If I can amplify the electromagnetic field, perhaps I can scramble their targeting systems. He nods, adjusting the turret's angle. Do it. As she channels her power, the lights flicker again, and Jace feels a low thrumming through the floor. He lines up the turret for one final shot, aiming at the pirate ship's bridge. If he can disable their command center, they might break off the attack. The console sparks, and a surge of energy floods the turret's cannons. Jace squeezes the triggers, unleashing a supercharged blast that streaks across the void. It slams into the pirate ship's forward section, tearing through armor and sending a plume of flame and debris into space. For a moment, everything is silent except for the crackling of damaged systems. Then Harlow's voice crackles over the intercom again, this time with a note of relief. They're retreating. Looks like you scared them off. Nice shooting. Jace exhales, slumping in the seat. His hands are shaking from the intensity of the fight. Virelli lets go of the console, breathing hard. A trickle of smoke rises from her fingers. He turns to her, concern evident in his eyes. Are you hurt? She flexes her hand, wincing. Some burns, but nothing severe. She meets his gaze, a fierce pride shining in her eyes. We did it. He manages a shaky grin. Yeah, we did, He stands, stumbling slightly in the cramped compartment. Varelli catches him, steadying him with her uninjured hand. Her body is trembling too, from exertion or adrenaline or both. They exit the turret compartment, climbing back down to the main corridor. Crew members rush past, tending to damaged systems. The ship is in rough shape, but it's still intact. Harlow storms up, scowling. "That was too close," he growls. "But I gotta admit, you two saved our hides." Jace doesn't bother with a polite reply. He's exhausted, and Varelli's obviously in pain. "Is the ship still on course for the outer rings?" Harlow nods curtly. "Yeah. Might take a bit longer with the damage, but we'll get there." He eyes Varelli warily, then stalks off, barking orders at his crew. Jace turns to Varelli, gently taking her injured hand. The burns are red and raw. "Let me see if there's a med kit around here," he mutters. He spots one mounted on the wall, rips it open, and rummages for burn salve. Carefully, he applies it to her palm. She inhales sharply but doesn't pull away. "Thank you," she says softly, her eyes fixed on his face. He finishes wrapping her hand in gauze, then meets her gaze. "You saved my life up there. You saved the whole ship." She smiles, a small, tired smile. "We saved each other." Again. He nods, his chest tightening with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. Despite the danger, despite the chaos, they keep protecting each other. He wonders if this is what a bond really is, two people choosing to stand together, no matter how different they are. They head back to the cargo hold, where the flickering lights and the hum of damaged engines create an uneasy atmosphere. Varelli sinks onto a storage crate, cradling her bandaged hand in her lap. Jace stands before her, feeling the weight of everything they've been through pressing down on him. "I'm sorry you got hurt," he murmurs. She lifts her gaze, her expression soft. "Do not apologize. I would endure far worse to keep you safe." He swallows hard, heart twisting. "You really mean that, don't you?" She nods, her golden eyes unwavering. "Yes." He takes a slow, unsteady breath. The magnitude of her words hits him like a blow. He can't keep denying that he feels something profound for her. She's risked her life, burned her hand, and stood by him through every moment of danger. And all because of a single act of kindness he performed when he found her injured in that crash. But it's more than that now. It's grown into something neither of them fully understands. He steps closer, gently touching the side of her face. "I don't know what's going to happen when we reach the outer rings," he admits, his voice low and thick with emotion. "But I know I don't want to lose you." She closes her eyes, leaning into his touch. "Nor I you." He bends down, pressing his forehead to hers, feeling the gentle pulse of her luminescent markings against his skin. They stay like that for a long moment, the chaos of the ship's repairs swirling around them, the alarms and curses and clatter of tools fading into the background. In that moment, there's only the two of them, sharing a breath, a heartbeat, a fragile sense of hope. Eventually, they pull apart. Jace helps her up, and they find a relatively quiet corner of the cargo hold to rest. The ship's artificial night cycle will kick in soon, giving the crew a chance to recover. Harlow has assured them the pirates won't be back. They dealt enough damage to send the raiders fleeing. But the tension lingers, a reminder that they're never truly safe out here. They settle on the floor, leaning against the bulkhead. Varelli rests her head on his shoulder, her tail draped across his legs. He holds her, one arm around her waist, the other gently stroking the uninjured hand. Either of them speaks. Words aren't necessary in this moment. They've survived another trial, and each time, their bond grows stronger, more undeniable. He wonders if he should feel scared by that. He wonders if this is the point where he should push her away, guard his heart, keep himself safe from the pain of losing someone again. But he's tired of running. Tired of pretending he doesn't need anyone. So he closes his eyes, allowing himself to relax into her warmth, letting the subtle glow of her markings lull him. Maybe tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, they'll face more threats. But for now, they have each other, and that's enough. When the ship finally slips into faster-than-light travel toward the outer rings, Jace drifts off into a fitful sleep, his arms still around Varelli. His dreams are a swirl of alien landscapes, star-filled skies, and the soft sound of her purring. He doesn't know what awaits them at journey's end, but for the first time in a long time, he feels a spark of hope. He wakes to a gentle shake of his shoulder. Varelli's eyes glow softly in the dim light. "We have arrived," she whispers, and he realizes the engines have shifted tone. The freighter must have dropped out of FTL. He rubs his eyes, stiff from sleeping on the hard floor. Varelli helps him to his feet, her bandaged hands still cradled protectively against her chest. They gather their meager belongings as Harlow's voice crackles over the ship's speakers. "We're entering orbit around Calyx Station. This is where you two get off. I've done my part, so get your asses off my ship as soon as we dock." Jace and Varelli share a look. Neither of them knows what to expect on Calyx Station, but it's the stepping stone they need. It's remote, lightly regulated, and full of travelers from all corners of the galaxy. If they can't find answers here, maybe they can at least find a place to lie low until they figure out their next move. They head to the airlock, where Harlow is waiting, arms folded. The docking clamps engage with a dull clang. The doors slide open, revealing the sterile, gray corridor of Calyx Station's docking bay. "Thanks," Jace says curtly, "for letting us ride." Harlow grunts, waving them away. "Get lost. And try not to blow up any more pirate ships while you're at it." Jace leads Varelli onto the station, the air tasting recycled and metallic. They pass through a security checkpoint without incident. Dex's forged ID must be holding up. Varelli keeps her head down, though a few passers-by still stare at her towering form. They find themselves in a large atrium filled with kiosks, shops, and neon signs advertising everything from off-world travel to questionable pleasure domes. Jace spots an out-of-the-way alcove near a row of dusty plants. They step aside, letting the throng of travelers move around them. "We're here," he says, unsure of what else to add. "Now we figure out what's next." Varelli touches his arm gently. "Yes. Together." She looks up at the vast interior of the station, the multiple levels, the swirling crowds of different species. A flicker of uncertainty crosses her features. "This place is overwhelming." He squeezes her shoulder. "We'll manage. First, let's find somewhere to stay. Then we can start looking for clues about your crash, or any Felinari contacts. We have time now." She nods, and they begin walking, navigating the crowds. A few station guards eye them suspiciously, but nobody stops them. As they pass a cluster of shops, Varelli suddenly halts, her ears perking up. Jace follows her gaze to a large display screen broadcasting local news. The volume is low, but he can read the headlines. "Shape-shifting alien incident on colony, suspect at large." His stomach drops. A grainy video clip shows a distorted view of Varelli in her 8-foot form, standing amid the wreckage of the crash site, calling him Daddy. He clenches his jaw, turning away before anyone notices them watching. Varelli's face is tense. "They are still searching for us." He slips an arm around her waist, guiding her away from the screen. "We'll have to be careful. But we're off that planet now. They'll have a harder time tracking us here." She leans into him, the weight of her body comforting despite the danger. "I will do whatever it takes to remain by your side," she murmurs. He feels a surge of protectiveness. "I know," he replies. "And I'll do the same for you. No matter what they say, no matter what they think, you're not some monster or experiment. You're just you, Varelli." A soft smile touches her lips. "And you are Jace. My caretaker. My daddy." She says it quietly, and for once, he doesn't cringe. He meets her gaze, sees the warmth and devotion there, and feels his own walls cracking. Maybe the word doesn't have to be mortifying. Maybe it can be their private joke, their bond, a reminder of how they came together in the midst of chaos. He gently cups her cheek, ignoring the curious stares of passing travelers. "If that's what you want to call me, then fine," he murmurs. "Just maybe not so loud in public." She laughs softly, the sound a musical purr that makes his heart clench. Agreed. They resume walking, the station's lights reflecting in her golden eyes. Despite the uncertainty, despite the looming threats and unanswered questions, he feels a strange sense of peace. She's at his side, and for the first time in a long time, he's not alone. They move together through the bustling crowd, an unlikely pair bound by chance, misunderstanding, and a growing love that defies logic. As they pass through the station's corridors, seeking a place to call their own, he can't help but think back to that moment when he found her, just a small, injured creature, barely clinging to life. If he had walked away, if he had decided it wasn't his problem, none of this would have happened. But he didn't. He rescued an alien cat, and now she's an 8-foot alien girl calling him daddy in public. And somehow, against all odds, he wouldn't have it any other way.